Good morning, everyone. I have my cup of tea. This is my Tribe cup that I love. A good friend and group of friends have given it to me. Today we thought we would, and Fee's joining me in a moment, we thought we would talk a little bit around the subject of self-awareness. And it's one that I guess has gained, it's one of those words, it's a little bit like confidence. It's one of those words that we talk about a lot, but is it? And how self-aware are
Hi, Kate.
people? Hey, Fiona.
Good morning.
I was just saying, is that better for you in terms of audio?
Yes, I'm not getting the echo, thanks.
I was just saying self-awareness and is one of those words. It's a little bit like confidence. It's a word that we use quite often, but it's quite nebulous. You know, what is it? Like, what is it really? And how self-aware are people? And then how do we then use that to, leverage or navigate our own personal growth, but also interact within the workplace?
Yes, definitely. We're talking this month coming up a lot about emotional intelligence. And when Kate and I were preparing for this, we went, well, what's the state we need to be in? What's important for emotional intelligence? And we went, well, actually, self-awareness is a prerequisite. So we've got to kind of understand ourselves, know where we're at. But when we dive into a bit of the research around self-awareness, as you say, it's nebulous. It's not something people are clear about. But interestingly, we all think we're very self-aware. The research says that's not so. Apparently, about 80 to 95% of us will put our hand up and say, yep, I'm self-aware. But when we do it by the criteria, by the actual requirements, it's actually only 10 to 15% of people are showing the understanding or the sense of what self-awareness is, both internally, how they view themselves and what they're doing with themselves, but also how other people are seeing them. So we might be strong in one or the other, but it's quite rare for people to be strong in both. And to have that, really solid self-awareness that is necessary to communicate. As you're saying, it's not just about me and how I show up. That's important, but it's also how, when I interact with others, how that lands, how they perceive me, if I'm getting my message across, if I'm able to communicate well.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I had an experience of this at the beginning of last year, where we worked with a colleague of mine to do my TLC, which is Total Leadership Circle profile. And it's like any sort of 360. You do your self-assessment, and then you have a selection of people do that same self-assessment on you. What was fascinating, and I've been out of corporate for, at that point, 9 years, so I hadn't had something like this done for a while. But it was interesting because you do get this sense or this picture of, okay, how do I see myself? And I'm 15, 20 years of personal development. So, I would like to think that how I see myself, if we're to talk in that language, is reasonably on. What was fascinating, though, for me was the harsh inner critic that came out of that, because I had ranked myself much harsher than my colleagues had ranked me in a number of aspects. And so what the beautiful debrief of that was the reconciliation of that, and the conversation then was what's actually going on. And I remember saying to our colleague that debriefed is, you're not witness to all the self-talk and the thinking that goes on in this head, right? Like, there is a lot of thinking that I never would ever vocalize. So it was a really interesting, I think, reflection and discussion. And you and I talked about it a little bit as well, because it's that piece of how do others see you. And we see this in our work with confidence all the time. People will say that, I feel like everyone thinks that I'm confident, but actually inside I'm not confident at all. So this kind of the immersion of two versions of us on some level, one that we allow others to see, and then this other one that is filtered for various reasons.
Yeah, no, you make a couple of really great points there. And one of the things that the Harvard study, you know, which those statistics come from. And they did that over 4 years. So it was quite a robust study with a very big sample group. And they were really interested in this notion of rumination and how we can spend too much time in introspection. So what they found was there were some people, and it does tend to be the people like us who are interested in personal development, who are so fascinated by this stuff that we can get almost in a loop of our own kind of thinking and questioning that isn't actually that helpful with self-awareness. As you've exactly explained, it can take us away from rather than leading us closer to who we really are and how we're showing up. So I think it's what I like about the model that they've developed is that it's an integration piece. It's, you know, it is taking these two facets and going, well, how about you get some data from both, from yourself, but also from others, and then you look at what that means. And the people who are most self-aware have really good alignment between those two. They actually, how they see themselves and how others see them is pretty solid.
Yeah, and I think that's the opportunity in all of this. I mean, you know, how do you go about self-awareness? It's almost a little bit like how long's a piece of string. But that ability to obviously pay, you know, there's two sides, pay attention to what's going on. But I think more than anything, you know, we're more prone to the rumination. We're more prone to kind of the self, I'm going to say obsession around who am I and what's going on in here. And, you know, I'd suggest that perhaps it's right, for most of it, it's right sizing that. And it's checking that in against how others see you. In our Accelerate workshop, 3 times a year in the Accelerate Leadership Program, we come together. And in the March one, or the one that's just gone, we did this activity on, you know, how do, and it's just a simple mirroring process, right? Which is how do others see me? What is it that they're observing in me? And this is obviously an activity Fee and I do with clients all the time, is that when I show up, what are others noticing about me or perceiving from me? And having that vocalized, and then being able to see, number one, get an insight into how true is that and sense how true that is. But what's fascinating about it is, you know, and I did this in our demo, you know, you seem quite serious. My client said, oh, you seem quite serious right now. And I was like, gosh, there was no element of serious in my body at all at that particular point in time. So I think it's interesting, you know, and this is where perception becomes reality, right? And, you know, we've talked a lot about this in terms of, you know, personal branding work, but all those sorts of things, which is, you know, actually paying attention to how others are seeing and perceiving you, and then looking at, okay, cool. So what is the truth, which is almost, you know, a fluid answer. And then how do I influence that? How do I influence how others see me? And then how do I make sense of perhaps what's going on in my head and the story I'm telling myself?
Yes, yeah, I think that piece, actually the terminology self-obsession is really helpful here, because it's about having enough understanding and being able to be clear for me, but also taking that data, that intel that other people are giving us, and using those two things combined. Because what happens if we listen too much to other people or to the wrong people is that we can end up either getting very despondent, like feeling very unhappy, or we can end up just pleasing, like we're just trying to do something because it'll get us tick the boxes, or people will be happy with us for doing something. So it's really important to calibrate and, as you say, right size those two things. And that's kind of a fascinating piece from the research. I think the other thing is when we're listening to others, to be really conscious of who we're listening to. So don't necessarily take that data from just everybody. One of the things that the research found was have a core group, assemble a core group of loving critics. And I really love that expression. It's that juxtaposition, loving critics. Yeah. So people who you trust to tell you that, you know, the frank, sometimes hard truth, and you're prepared to listen to them, and you can actually take that in. And if you've got a core group, and, you know, it's good to have some work colleagues and some personal, and we're only talking here about 5 to 7 people, not a lot. But people who've known you over time can actually give you that feedback on a fairly regular basis, because getting feedback willy-nilly can actually be more confusing. So it's really important to make sure you know where the data is coming from and that you trust it.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And, you know, when you assemble that group, so when you assemble that tribe or group of 5 to 7, be really clear about why you're asking for the feedback. You know, this is specifically what I'm seeking. Because what happens is we then give them permission to be able to tell us, but we make it safe for them to be able to give us that feedback. And I think that's particularly, actually, it's important in both personal and professional as well. So I think two opportunities. One is obviously the relationship with self. And depending on how much work you've done, personal development is a beautiful way to start to go deeper into self-awareness. You know, I think the whole conversation we had during the month of this month around mindfulness and, you know, breath and meditation, all of those sorts of things are really good opportunities to get connected in with what's going on. But I think that piece around, and we've been doing it a lot, you know, using the body to pull you out of rumination and pull you out of the cognitive and the mind. And we're not going to go into it, but looking at the different intelligences and trying to leverage the multiple intelligences of the body when we're having this conversation around self-awareness, and particularly the physical body and the heart intelligence. I think most of us have got the cognitive
Yes.
and the brain intelligence nailed, but actually the ability to use the body more to find out what is that truth. And that touches on that activity that we've got in chapter 8 around be authentic, around connecting and knowing what is your truth. So I think on the self-awareness, you know the self, that's awesome. And I think the activity that you mentioned, or building that loving critic, love that topic. Building that kind of team of people who you can, and I see this with clients all the time, you know, they've got their people who are in meetings with them, and when they come out, they do a debrief and they look at what went well and what could they do differently. And it's like having, you know, a team of coaches around you to help you up your game all the time, but also be able to assess, because sometimes you know, we can be really hard on ourselves. And I think if we think about confidence and core confidence, one of the common messages that we see with clients is that harsh inner critic, and it's that self-talk that corrodes our confidence. You know, one of the fundamental messages around core confidence is we all are connected to core confidence, right? We all have it in us. We have strategies where we give our confidence away. And one of the biggest strategies is self-talk and that inner critic. So the more that we can right-size that, the more that we can stay connected to that core confidence.
Yes, no, I think that exactly what you're saying, that, you know, we need to be conscious of where our mind's going and where it's taking us and how helpful is that. And this thing about finding your loving critics and listening to them. I have a great friend and mentor, Robert, and anytime we go and do a meeting together, whether it's, you know, online or that sort of thing, afterwards he'll always say to me, so what could I have done better? And he does it in such a lovely way. He's really inquisitive and curious, and it's such a great role model. It's encouraged me to ask more often of people. And obviously, you know, it's someone you trust, it's someone you care for. So I think being prepared and watching others do that, but also just reaching out to people in a moment that's really relevant. So if you've done something important together, you've done something with someone you trust, to actually in that moment say, yeah, you know, love hearing what I've done well, and it would be great to get a couple of pointers on what could I do that little bit better. So
yeah,
so I think there's lots of good ways for people to practice here, and I think to connect this back to what is it that I'm trying to achieve? Who am I trying to communicate with? Why does this matter? And just, you know, slowing yourself down enough to go, you know, I can do this, and the more I do it, the more I will be in a space where I'm connected to that inner resource of core confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. As we say, every day you'll have an opportunity to work on, you know, core confidence. I think self-awareness is almost every minute, if not every hour. There is an opportunity to dive into this and to really connect, observe your relationship with confidence. And then, as we always say, and just staircase your way. It's little things every day that, you know, strengthen that connection with core confidence. It strengthen that awareness and that relationship. And it's just doing small, you know, acts. The act of confidence comes before the feeling of confidence. So small things every day help us staircase our way to core confidence. So on that note, I know you've got a busy day ahead of you. We are talking emotional intelligence this month. So guys, if you've got any questions, please pop them either below this video or shoot us a Facebook message. We'd love to answer those. If you've got topics you'd love us to talk about, If you've got the book, then would love to hear that feedback and answer those questions. If you don't have the book, we'll make sure we pop the link in below so you can go ahead and grab a copy. And look, guys, if you like this Facebook message video, feel free to share it. We are out active. Fiona's on stage tomorrow, is it?
Thursday.
Here in Sydney. Thursday.
Yeah.
At the Australian Healthcare Conference. So if you're in Sydney, check out details. It's posted in the Facebook group. You can get along there as well.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kate.
All right. Have a good day. We'll see you next week, guys, as we talk more about this subject of emotional intelligence this month.